Hi, Mark, and today I need to talk about the cost of living crisis again. According to the House of Commons, the cost of living increased sharply across the UK during 2021 and 22. The annual rate of inflation reached 11.1% in October 22. That's a 41-year high before easing in subsequent months. It was 10.1% in March 23. That's the seventh successive month of double-digit inflation. And high inflation affects the affordability of goods and services for all households. Another important driver of inflation is energy prices, with household energy tariffs and road fuel costs increasing. From March 22 to March 23, domestic gas prices increased by 129% and domestic electricity prices by 67%. And gas prices increased to record levels after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine and continued to rise during much of 22 due to cuts in Russian supply. Electricity prices are linked to gas prices and have followed a similar trend. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak promised in January to halve inflation within the year. It's one of his top 5 campaign promises, and although he's not responsible for monetary stability but the Bank of England, it's a bold one given that the UK currently has the highest inflation rate of any G7 country. In the 12 months that ended in March 23, it was 10.1%, as I said, and that was according to the Office for National Statistics, significantly higher than here in Germany, where inflation was 7.4% at the time, or in the Eurozone when it was 6.9%. The cost of living crisis is currently more on the minds of the British public than any other issue. The standard of living of British households has not deteriorated as it has in recent years since the 1950s, when statistical coverage began. Like it is today, it was never before. And Sunak can at least assume that energy prices will fall significantly in the coming months, and that this will also lower the rate of price increases. But in a country where most consumers heat with expensive gas, high energy prices make a big difference. For example, last week nearly all independent banks, which are required to submit forecasts to the UK Treasury, estimated that inflation could fall to as low as 4% by the end of the year and to 2.7% in election year 24. If that were the case, Sunak would have achieved his goal. But we will have to wait and see. However, it's currently food prices in particular that are driving up inflation with a rate of increase of 19.2%. Last year's drought, labor shortages and high energy costs have meant that British agriculture has underplanted and undergrown in the greenhouses for the past year. The poor harvest then forced the food industry to import more from countries like Morocco and Spain, which themselves had to complain about crop failures. The position of the United Kingdom outside the EU also made it difficult to plan food imports at short notice and led to price increases. And not only that, British supermarkets usually offer groceries, especially fresh produce, even cheaper than here in Germany, for example. However, with imports from the EU becoming more expensive, supermarkets in the UK have been forced to raise prices significantly or ration vegetables, which is what most supermarkets have been doing for the past few weeks, now again with peppers. As prices for energy, packaging and transport have also risen, consumers are groaning under sometimes grotesque price jumps. The high prices are slowly eating their way through the national economy, and market forces are also evident even in eggs. In the face of the bird flu shortages, many producers in the UK have stopped supplying supermarkets sometime. And the shelves there were empty, but eggs were always available at the butcher or a small shop around the corner, albeit at significantly higher prices. Many households can no longer afford the price increases. In the UK, there are now 2,500 food banks run by the Trussell Trust charity and other NGOs, which provide food via vouchers from city authorities and departments. According to the Trussell Trust, the use of the banks has increased steadily over the past 6 years, especially during the Corona period. However, it fell again last year, also because the state intervened with special aid and energy aid packages. But nevertheless, the stubbornly high prices are sloting although their way through the national economy. Pubs, restaurants and hotels are now also raising their prices by 11%. At the same time, the strikes and demonstrations in the country, with which doctors, nurses, railway staff, fire brigades, teachers, and government employees are fighting for higher wages, they continue. The government is reluctant to grant wage increases of more than 5% so as not to fuel inflation. Wage increases in the private sector are currently 6.9%, higher than in the EU and the USA, although we had a very high one in Germany for public employees last week. The Bank of England has raised interest rates 11 times since last summer, from 0.1 to 4.25%, and it's now questionable whether it will continue raising interest rates in May. Many observers believe this, even suspect that the base rate, that means the bank's reference interest rate, could rise to 5% by the end of the year. And this would be bad news for UK homeowners even. Those for whom the fixed interest rate on their mortgage is now expiring will suddenly have to pay mortgage rates 3 times higher than in recent years. And the stronger this increase in costs is, the more it will weigh on private households and on demand in the economy. And meanwhile, MPs from the right-wing Conservative wing of the Conservative Party are using the inflationary debacle to question the independence of the Bank of England. Jacob Rees-Mogg, short-term Minister for Economic Affairs under the failed Prime Minister Liz Truss, repeatedly accused the Bank of England of having done too little to counter the past monetary expansion and started the series of interest rate hikes too late. He did this on his TV show on GB News. He and Truss keep hinting that they question rate setting by a central bank body that isn't accountable to Parliament. Either way, it's going to be a difficult year for UK consumers, and we all have to be sorry for those consumers, because a lot of this is homemade, starting with the Brexit referendum, where I have to blame the people, or the 51.9% or 0.8% that went to vote on that day to vote for Brexit, plus the Tory government since that time, at least since that time, until today. What they are doing so much against their own economy and against their own people that you really can only feel sorry for the normal people in the UK. As I said, the ones voting for Brexit, there's a little bit less compassion for them than for the others that voted leave and got into the situation. But we are talking about the lives of people, and I really don't see that change too quickly, because this government, oh boy, and I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.